Hey guys, before starting, just a small request to subscribe the channel. Also, please comment down below the country or city you are watching the video from. This small support will encourage me to increase the video quality and content. Now let's begin. It all started so innocently. I had my Snapchat ID listed in my Instagram bio, and I often got friend requests from random people. Most of the time I just blocked them without thinking twice. But one day, I got a request from a guy who looked really good in his selfie. He seemed normal with a genuine smile and kind eyes, so I decided to accept his request. His first message was a simple, "Hi," followed by his selfie. It looked real enough, so I replied, "Hey, what's up?" We started chatting, and he seemed nice at first. He was funny and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We talked about our hobbies, favorite movies, and music. It was refreshing to have a normal conversation with someone online for once. But then, things started to take a turn. He began making adult jokes and using cheesy pickup lines. It made me a bit uncomfortable, but I tried to brush it off, thinking he was just trying to be funny or flirtatious. I decided to carry on with the conversation because why not? Maybe he was just nervous. However, it quickly escalated. One night, out of nowhere, he sent me a gross, explicit photo. My stomach turned and I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. I immediately blocked him, not wanting to deal with such disrespect. I tried to forget about it and went on with my night, watching some TV and eventually going to bed. But the next morning I received a text from a new Snapchat ID. "Why did you block me?" it said. My heart sank. I realized it was the same guy. Without thinking much, I blocked him again, hoping that would be the end of it. But that night, I received another text from a different ID. "Look at the window," it said. A chill ran down my spine. Slowly, I turned to look at my window, and there, in the darkness, I saw a man in his 40s staring at me. His face was pressed against the glass, his eyes wide and unsettling. I screamed and ran to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. My hands were shaking as I dialed 911. Explaining the situation to the dispatcher as clearly as I could. The police arrived quickly, but by the time they got here, the man was gone. They searched the area, but found no trace of him. They assured me they would keep an eye on the neighborhood and told me to call them if anything else happened. I was terrified, but tried to convince myself that it was over. The next day, I tried to go about my routine, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Then, another text came in. "Hey, it's me again," it said, from yet another new Snapchat ID. This time I had my curtains drawn so I couldn't see if he was outside or not. I called the cops again and explained the situation. While waiting for the police to arrive, I had an idea. I added the guy on Snapchat and started chatting with him, pretending to be interested in what he had to say. I kept him occupied, asking questions and responding to his messages, all the while feeling a sense of dread building up inside me. As I chatted, I explained to the police over the phone that I was talking to the guy and trying to keep him engaged. They advised me to keep him talking until they arrived. Minutes felt like hours, but I managed to keep up the conversation, even though it was making my skin crawl. Finally, I heard a soft knock at the door. The police had arrived. I kept texting the guy, asking him to tell me more about himself, as the officers quietly moved into position. Then, there was a sudden flurry of activity outside. I heard shouting and the sound of a struggle. After a few tense moments, an officer knocked on my door. "We've got him," he said, his voice reassuring. "You're safe now." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding and thanked the officers profusely. They took my statement and assured me that they would handle everything from here. The man had been arrested, and I hoped that was the end of it. But even though he was gone, the experience left me shaken. I couldn't believe how quickly a simple Snapchat conversation had turned into a nightmare. I decided to remove my Snapchat ID from my Instagram bio and changed all my privacy settings. I didn't want to take any more chances. That night, I went to bed with my curtains drawn tightly shut and my phone on silent. I hoped that I could finally get some rest without worrying about who might be watching me from the darkness outside. I never imagined a simple night out could turn into a nightmare. It all started when I received a Snapchat message from a guy named Jake. He seemed charming and funny, and we had been chatting for a couple of weeks. He often posted stories of parties and nights out, which made him seem like the life of the party. Eventually, he invited me to a party at his friend's house. He seemed genuine enough, so I decided to go. After all, it was just a party, and I could leave whenever I wanted. The party was in a nice neighborhood, and the house was buzzing with people and loud music. I texted Jake to let him know I had arrived, and he replied almost instantly, telling me to come inside and find him near the kitchen. The house was huge, with dim lighting and colorful decorations. People were everywhere, dancing, chatting, and having a good time. I made my way to the kitchen where Jake had said he would be. I spotted him almost immediately. He was taller than I expected, with a broad smile and an easygoing demeanor. He waved me over and we exchanged pleasantries. He seemed nice, just like he had been online. We grabbed drinks and started talking. He introduced me to a few of his friends, and everything seemed perfectly normal. As the night progressed, Jake suggested we move to a quieter part of the house to talk. I agreed, thinking it would be nice to get to know him better without shouting over the music. He led me upstairs to a room that was empty except for a few pieces of furniture. We sat down on the couch, and he started asking me more personal questions. It was a bit uncomfortable, but I chalked it up to him, just trying to be friendly. Then things took a turn. Jake moved closer to me, his demeanor changing. He started making suggestive comments and touching my arm in a way that made me uneasy. I tried to laugh it off and change the subject, but he persisted. My unease grew with every passing second. I decided it was time to leave and made an excuse about needing to find my friends. When I stood up to go, Jake grabbed my wrist, his grip tight and insistent. "Don't go," he said, his voice taking on a menacing edge. Panic surged through me. I yanked my arm away and made a beeline for the door, but he was right behind me. I ran down the hallway, my heart pounding, and darted into a bathroom, locking the door behind me. I could hear Jake outside, banging on the door and shouting for me to come out. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911. I tried to keep my voice steady as I explained the situation to the dispatcher, my eyes glued to the door. "Please stay on the line," the dispatcher said. "Officers are on their way." Jake's banging grew louder, and I could hear him cursing under his breath. My heart raced as I prayed for the police to arrive quickly. Then, suddenly, the noise stopped. There was an eerie silence, and I wondered if he had given up. I didn't dare open the door to check. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps outside the bathroom, but these were different, heavier, more authoritative. Then came a knock, but this time it was accompanied by a voice saying, "Police, it's safe to come out." I opened the door to find two officers standing there, their expression serious but reassuring. Jake was nowhere in sight. "Are you okay?" one of the officers asked. I nodded, my voice barely above a whisper. He was right there. He tried to... "You're safe now," the other officer said. "We have him in custody. Let's get you out of here." They escorted me downstairs and out of the house. Jake was being led away in handcuffs, his face twisted in anger. I couldn't believe how quickly the situation had escalated. The officers took my statement, and I explained everything that had happened. They reassured me that Jake would be charged and that I had done the right thing by calling them. The party had come to a standstill, with people whispering and looking on in confusion. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as I left the house with the police. They offered to take me home, and I gratefully accepted. As I sat in the back of the police car, I couldn't help but think about how differently the night could have ended. It was a sobering reminder of the dangers of meeting people from the internet. I had trusted Jake based on his online persona, but he had turned out to be someone completely different. When I got home, I deleted my Snapchat and other social media accounts where I had shared personal information. The experience had left me shaken, but I was determined to learn from it and be more cautious in the future. The next few days were a blur of police reports and talking to my friends and family about what had happened. They were all supportive, but I could see the worry in their eyes. It took a while for me to feel safe again, but I knew I was stronger for having gone through it. From that night on, I was much more careful about who I interacted with online. The world of social media could be fun and exciting, but it also had a dark side that I had seen firsthand. It was a lesson I would never forget. It was a Friday night, and I was scrolling aimlessly through Instagram. The week had been long and stressful, and I was looking for a distraction. That's when I stumbled upon her profile. Her name was Lila. She had thousands of followers, and her pictures were stunning. One thing caught my eye. Her Snapchat ID in her bio. I don't usually add people from Instagram on Snapchat, but something about her seemed intriguing. I added her, and to my surprise, she added me back almost immediately. Within minutes, I received a snap from her. A selfie with a friendly, "Hey, what's up?" written on it. She looked even more beautiful in her snap, with a genuine smile that made me feel like she was happy to hear from me. We started chatting, and it didn't take long for the conversation to flow naturally. We talked about everything: music, movies, our favorite places to hang out. She seemed like the perfect girl, funny, smart, and genuinely interested in getting to know me. Over the next few days, our conversations grew more frequent and personal. I found myself looking forward to her messages. One evening, Lila sent me a snap saying she was going to a party and invited me to join her. It was at an address not too far from my place. I was a bit hesitant at first, but she assured me that it would be fun and that she'd love to finally meet in person. I figured, why not? It could be a great time. When I arrived at the address, it was an old, seemingly abandoned warehouse. I double-checked the location on my phone to make sure I had the right place. The lights inside were dim, and there was no sound of music or chatter. My gut told me something was off, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe the party hadn't started yet. I sent Lila a snap telling her I was outside. She replied quickly, saying she'd meet me at the door. After a few moments, the door creaked open, and there she was. She smiled and beckoned me inside. The warehouse was dark and eerily quiet. I followed her down a long corridor, trying to make small talk to ease my growing unease. "So, where is everyone?" I asked, my voice echoing slightly in the empty space. "Oh, they're in the back room," she replied, her tone light and unconcerned. "We're just a bit early." As we continued walking, I noticed that some of the doors along the corridor were slightly ajar. I could see into dark, empty rooms filled with old furniture and dusty crates. The place had a creepy, abandoned feel to it. I began to feel a growing sense of unease. We reached a heavy metal door at the end of the corridor. Lila pushed it open, revealing a small room lit by a single flickering bulb. The room was empty except for a couple of old chairs and a dusty table. My instincts screamed at me to turn around and leave. "Lila, are you sure this is the right place?" I asked, my voice shaky. "Yeah, this is it," she said. But there was something off about her tone. It lacked the warmth and friendliness it had before. I took a step back, trying to buy some time. "I need to grab something from my car," I said quickly. "I'll be right back." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she nodded. "Okay, don't take too long." I turned and walked quickly back down the corridor, my heart pounding in my chest. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and every instinct told me to get out of there as fast as possible. As soon as I was out of her sight, I broke into a run. I burst through the front door of the warehouse and sprinted to my car. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking, but finally managed to unlock the door and jump in. As I started the engine, I glanced back at the warehouse. Lila was standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. I didn't wait to find out what she was thinking. I sped out of the parking lot and drove as fast as I could back to my apartment. My mind raced with thoughts of what could have happened if I had stayed. The whole situation felt wrong, like I had narrowly escaped something terrible. When I got home, I locked the door and sat down on the couch, trying to calm down. I opened Snapchat and saw that Lila had sent me another message. "Why did you leave?" I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked her and deleted Snapchat from my phone. I didn't want to risk any further contact with her. Something about the whole night had felt like a setup, and I was glad I trusted my instincts. The next morning, I received a call from Alex. He asked how the party was, and I told him everything that had happened. He was shocked and told me that he had never heard of a party at that address. In fact, he knew that the warehouse had been abandoned for years. That sealed it for me. I had narrowly avoided a dangerous situation, and I was grateful that I had listened to my gut. From then on, I was much more cautious about who I interacted with online.